In the courtroom, my sister stared directly at the judge and declared, "Finally, the house is mine." She didn't even glance my way. She didn't need to. Behind her, our parents burst into applause, the genuine, triumphant kind you give when victory already feels certain. I stood motionless, fists tight, sensing every gaze in the room shift toward me. To them, I probably looked broken, the quiet sister, the one who always yields. Lauren's smile carried the certainty of a finished story. What nobody seemed to notice was the judge's face. She stopped paging through the file. Her fingers stilled, then she raised her eyes and looked straight at me. "Miss Carter," she said, voice level, "before I make my ruling, I have one question for you." That was the instant Lauren's smile flickered, and the narrative they had all accepted began quietly coming apart. My name is Hazel Carter. Long before any of us entered that courtroom, my family had already decided who I was permitted to become. Lauren, my older sister, was confidence made flesh. She spoke boldly, laughed without effort, and never questioned that she deserved the largest share of every room. Our parents cherished that quality in her. They called it drive, vision, strength. When Lauren entered a space, people instinctively made room. When I did, they hardly registered it. At family dinners, my father would rest a proud hand on Lauren's shoulder and announce, "This is our daughter Lauren. She knows exactly what she wants." Then his gaze would slide to me, almost reluctantly. "And this is Hazel. She's dependable." Dependable was the polite substitute they used when they couldn't think of anything more impressive to say. I learned young that objecting only made things worse. If Lauren cut me off, Mom would murmur, "Let her finish, Hazel." If Lauren helped herself to something of mine, Dad would shrug, "You don't really mind, do you?" And if I ever pushed back, even softly, the atmosphere would freeze. Why do you always have to make things difficult? So I stopped pushing. I stopped explaining. Silence became the safest corner I could find. When Grandma died, she left me the narrow old house on Cedar Lane. It wasn't luxurious, just sturdy, worn, honest, like she was. For reasons I never entirely grasped, she chose me to receive it. Lauren laughed when she heard. "What are you going to do with that wreck?" she asked over wine one evening. "Flip it and move back home?" "I'm keeping it," I answered quietly. My parents traded a glance. "That's a big responsibility," Mom said. "Wouldn't it make more sense to let Lauren oversee something like that?" There it was again, the automatic assumption that I couldn't manage, that I shouldn't try. I restored the house gradually, on my own schedule. After work hours, weekends spent sanding, learning from mistakes, paying every bill myself. Lauren never once stopped by. My parents never asked about progress, but the moment the place looked livable, valuable, the tone changed. Suddenly there were family discussions, concern, phone calls. One night Lauren rang, voice syrupy in a way that set my nerves on edge. "Mom and Dad think it's unfair you get the whole house to yourself." I held the line silent a beat. "It was legally left to me." She gave a small laugh. "We'll see." That call crystallized something. To my family, I wasn't an owner with rights. I was a caretaker holding something that, in their view, rightfully belonged to someone more deserving. And that someone was always Lauren. 2 weeks later, a thick envelope arrived. No sender, just my name typed on the front. Inside were legal papers. Lauren Carter versus Hazel Carter. My sister was suing me for the house. The complaint claimed I had verbally promised to share ownership, then backed out because of emotional instability and external pressures. The language was polished, almost reasonable-sounding cruelty. On the final page sat our parents' signatures, witness statements, calm and certain. That wounded more than the lawsuit itself. I phoned Mom first. She picked up already braced. "Hazel, this doesn't have to turn nasty. Your sister only wants fairness." "Fairness?" I asked softly. She never lifted a finger, never spent a cent. Dad took the phone. "You're acting selfish. Lauren has children. She needs stability. You're on your own." On my own, as though solitude canceled out ownership. "I earned that house," I said. "Grandma chose me." "She didn't know what she was doing," he cut in, "and frankly, neither do you." The call ended there. The hearing arrived faster than I expected, as though everyone was impatient to ratify a conclusion they'd already reached. That morning, I walked into the courthouse alone. Lauren sat between our parents, immaculately dressed, radiating poise. She offered me a quick, edged smile as I passed. "Relax," she whispered. "This will be over soon." I took my place at the defense table, empty bench behind me, no supportive hands, no family. Just me and the knowledge that they were no longer trying to convince me. They were trying to take from me. When the judge entered, we rose. My pulse hammered. I told myself, breathe, listen, stay steady. Lauren's attorney spoke first, building his case with measured confidence. He didn't attack outright. Instead, he constructed a portrait of me, slowly, carefully. Long hours at work, solitary renovation, refusal to involve family in big choices. He called it isolation. At times, he said gently, "Miss Carter has admitted feeling overwhelmed, uncertain, unsteady about the future." Lauren nodded solemnly, as though each phrase confirmed a private sorrow she'd always carried. Our parents watched without expression. Then the key line. "We submit that, during this vulnerable period, Miss Carter verbally agreed to co-own the Cedar Lane property with her sister Lauren, only to later revoke that promise." A promise? The word rang false in my head. I had never made one. But he didn't need proof yet. He only needed plausibility. "This is not about greed, Your Honor," he finished. "It is about concern. Concern that Miss Carter, under emotional strain, is no longer equipped to manage this asset responsibly." Equipped. The word settled like damp concrete over the room. Lauren rose next. "I love my sister," she said, voice soft and steady. "That's why I'm here. She's always been delicate. I simply want to keep her from a serious error." I nearly laughed aloud. Instead, I stayed quiet. She glanced at me, eyes keen. "Hazel gets overwhelmed so easily. She panics. She doubts herself. She even told me once she wasn't sure she could handle the house." That much was true. I had said it one exhausted midnight, paint on my knuckles, dust in my hair. What I meant was, handle it entirely alone. What Lauren heard was leverage. The lawyer leaned forward. "And that was when you offered to share the burden?" Lauren nodded. "To ease the pressure." Mom added suddenly, "She's always been the sensitive one. Hazel takes everything to heart." The judge looked up. "Mrs. Carter, you'll have your turn." Mom went quiet. The air in the room felt thicker, pressing. Every instinct urged me to interrupt, to correct, to shout the truth. But I didn't, because I understood. They weren't speaking to me anymore. They were performing for the judge. So I waited. After a taut pause, the judge lowered her eyes to the file again, turning pages deliberately, as though reading something beneath the surface of the words she'd just heard. Then she stopped. One finger rested on a line. She lifted her head and looked at me. "Miss Carter," she said evenly, "you've said very little today." Every face swiveled toward me. Lauren's lips curved faintly, expecting me to falter, to prove their portrait right. "Before I weigh the plaintiff's position further," the judge continued, "I need one point clarified." She lifted a document. "This supposed agreement to share ownership. When precisely did it occur?" Lauren's lawyer answered smoothly. "Roughly 1 year ago, Your Honor, in a private discussion between the sisters." The judge nodded, then turned back to me. "Miss Carter, do you recall such a conversation?" I drew a breath. "Yes." Lauren's smile broadened. "And do you recall agreeing to transfer any ownership interest in the property?" "No," I said. The single word fell clean and certain. Lauren's expression flickered, just for a heartbeat. The judge made a brief note. "You did mention feeling overwhelmed at that time. Can you explain what that meant to you?" "I was exhausted," I answered carefully. "Renovating an old house alone while holding a full-time job left me tired, not disoriented, not incapable." Lauren shifted in her seat. The judge glanced back at the document. "Yet this agreement asserts you were acting with full understanding and capacity." She tapped the page. Miss Lauren Carter, you say your sister asked you to share ownership. Why does the document mention no shared financial responsibility whatsoever? Lauren opened her mouth, closed it. Her lawyer stepped in. It was a matter of family trust, Your Honor. Trust, the judge repeated, is seldom spelled out in such meticulous detail. She turned another page. And one additional point. The defendant has provided tax records, building permits, insurance documents, all listing her as sole owner and responsible party, everyone dated after this alleged agreement. Lauren's foot began to tap. The judge leaned back. At this stage, I have questions, not about the defendant's credibility, but about the plaintiff's claim. A subtle shift moved through the room, quiet but unmistakable, like ice beginning to crack. That was when my attorney, Daniel Brooks, finally stood. He had remained silent through every embellishment, every concerned nod, every careful framing of me as fragile. He waited until the momentum appeared to favor Lauren completely. Your Honor, he began calmly, with permission, I'd like to address the purported agreement, the entire foundation of this case. He placed a slim folder before the bench. The judge examined it closely. Daniel continued, First, the financial structure is absent. No shared costs, no contribution to renovations, taxes, upkeep. Second, the timing. He handed over another page. This document is dated March of last year. Forensic analysis shows the ink used became commercially available only 6 months later. A ripple of sound passed through the spectators. Lauren's head jerked up. That's absurd. Daniel didn't glance her way. We submitted the document for independent examination, Your Honor. The report is in your file. The judge read in silence. Seconds stretched. Then she looked up. Miss Lauren Carter, were you aware this document had been forensically reviewed? Lauren swallowed. I don't see why that's relevant. It is relevant, the judge said neutrally, because the analysis concludes, with high confidence, that the signature does not match Hazel Carter's handwriting. My mother's hand rose to her lips. Lauren spun toward her lawyer. You said... He stayed silent. Daniel went on. There is more. He produced phone logs, texts, emails. These show contact from the plaintiff to my client only after the renovation increased the property's value, not before. He read one aloud. Now that it's actually worth something, we should talk. Lauren paled. Another. Mom and Dad agree it shouldn't all be yours. The judge exhaled slowly. And finally, Daniel said, this. He submitted a recording. Lauren stood. That's private. Sit, the judge ordered. Lauren sank down. The voicemail played, Lauren's voice sharp and unmistakable. Hazel, quit acting like this belongs only to you. Grandma would never have left it to you if she'd thought it through. Be smart and sign before this turns messy. The silence that followed was total. The judge switched off the recording and folded her hands. What troubles this court, she said deliberately, is not a sibling disagreement. It is a pattern of coercion, questionable timing, and an apparent effort to effect a transfer of title through questionable means. She looked at Lauren. I am not finished. Lauren closed her mouth. Turning to me, the judge asked, Miss Hazel Carter, you allowed others to describe you as unfit while you remained silent. Why? I answered truthfully. Because for most of my life I've been told who I am. I wanted the court to hear their version before it heard mine. The judge gave a single nod. Recognition, not pity. After a pause, she addressed Lauren again. Miss Carter, I have one final question for the defendant. I stood. My legs felt solid. Miss Hazel Carter, the judge said, why did you exclude your family from every aspect of the renovation, the finances, the management of this property? I didn't hesitate. Because every time I tried to include them, they told me I couldn't do it. Lauren laughed at my first supply run, said I was throwing money away. My parents called my late nights dramatic, called me fragile when I admitted I was tired. They never asked how I was. They only asked when it would be finished. I looked at Mom. You never once checked on me, only on the deadline. Lauren surged to her feet. This is emotional blackmail. She's playing the victim. I turned to her. No, you're angry because I didn't collapse. A murmur ran through the room. Lauren laughed, brittle. You think this is about failure? You wouldn't even have that house if Grandma hadn't messed up. The judge's face hardened. Miss Carter, you will speak to the court with respect. My father rose. Hazel, why are you breaking the family apart? I met his eyes. I'm not breaking anything. I'm just refusing to keep holding it together alone. The judge nodded slowly. That is an important difference. She turned to the attorneys. I have heard sufficient evidence. Lauren tried one last time. If she keeps the house, at least require oversight, for her protection. There is no legal ground for that request, the judge replied, and after today's testimony it would be entirely unwarranted. Lauren flushed. You're making a mistake. No, the judge said coolly. I am correcting one. She lifted her pen. Upon review of the evidence, this court finds that the plaintiff has failed to demonstrate any valid claim to the Cedar Lane property. Moreover, the submission of what appears to be a fabricated document raises serious concerns. Full ownership is confirmed with the defendant, Hazel Carter. I stood still, letting the words settle. And one final note, the judge added. Any future attempt to harass, intimidate, or misrepresent ownership of this property may result in additional legal action. The gavel fell. Release moved through me, not celebration, but relief. I gathered my things and walked out. Lauren stayed seated, staring ahead. My parents remained in their row. No one followed. Outside, the air tasted cleaner. My lawyer caught up. You handled that with extraordinary calm. Thank you, I said, for trusting the evidence. He smiled. The evidence spoke. You gave it room. Descending the courthouse steps, I understood I wasn't walking away from people who loved me poorly. I was walking away from a version of myself that believed love required endless endurance. That evening, I returned to Cedar Lane. The sun dipped low, stretching shadows across the porch I rebuilt board by board. The house looked the same, quiet, plain, strong. But now it felt truly mine, not only on paper, but in every choice that had carried me here. I stepped inside without turning on the lights and simply listened. Floorboards settling, fridge humming, silence that no longer felt empty. This house had never demanded I be smaller. It had simply waited for me to grow into it. My phone lit up. Mom, we need to talk. I set it face down. Not tonight. Some bridges need distance before they can be crossed honestly. Some don't need crossing at all. I moved room to room, touching walls I painted, shelves I hung, corners no one else ever saw. Each carried proof of persistence when no audience watched. Upstairs, I opened the bedroom window. Evening air flowed in. The future didn't feel like a grand declaration. Just open, steady, mine to shape. Lauren may never acknowledge what she attempted. My parents may never grasp why they lost me long before they lost in court. That's no longer my puzzle to solve. I turned off the lights and climbed the stairs carrying the only things that truly matter now. My voice, my limits, and the quiet certainty that I don't have to stay silent to belong, especially in my own life.